11,000 miles from San Francisco, 8,000 miles from New York, there lies a primeval desert, a mass of drifting sand and sun-baked earth 1/3 the size of the United States. A place of ancient glories. Long ago, a center of thriving trade where came the merchants from India and China to barter their wares for the spices and the incense. Pearl, evil days came upon the land, and for centuries fell into eclipse and remained until very recent years remote, unknown, and isolated. Most of its people were the Bedouin camel herders and shepherds who roamed the arid, hostile wastes from one oasis to another in the wake of scattered rains which produced short-lived patches of vegetation. Monotony and poverty were the common lot. But in their abiding faith, they found solace. For religion is not worn like a cloak in the Arab land. It is a vital part of every good Muslim's life. Muhammad united the Arabs, purified their customs, bound them into one people, and filled them with a great faith. 5 times a day, even the humblest Arab stops his work, faces Mecca, and intones the sacred words of the Quran. La ilaha illallah wa Muhammad Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. The limited water supply permitted, wheat was grown, and the Arab, essentially good-humored in spite of his hard life, would make a little dance and a little song as he threshed the grain. He winnowed out the wheat by letting the wind blow the chaff away. But crops, judged by modern standards, were pitifully small. And for townspeople and Bedouin alike, life was an endless struggle. None of them knew that this desert, barren of natural resources to the outward eye, had been blessed by nature beyond the wildest dreams of those who raided and struggled for life across its sandy, windswept wastes. And then, in this land of great tradition, there arose a powerful leader who unified his 5.5 million people and set out to achieve a renaissance. His Majesty Abdul Aziz ibn Saud, King of Saudi Arabia. He had faith that somewhere within these far-reaching sands was the key to a richer life for the Saudi Arabs who so long had known scarcity and want. Perhaps this country, so unproductive on the surface, might contain minerals below the surface, including oil. But vast sums would be needed for search and development, and there was no quick way to a realization of this hope. Then, in the early 1930s, an American oil company obtained a concession on Bahrain Island, 25 miles out on the Persian Gulf. The venture was successful, and occasionally there was speculation as to whether even greater opportunities might lie across the green waters of the Gulf in Saudi Arabia. And so, geologists talked about the possibilities, and they saw the low rise along the coast that could mean oil or could mean nothing at all. They debated and debated, and finally recommended that the risk be taken. But whether these unknown sands would justify the outlay of millions of dollars was still a decision that had to be made by the company directors in San Francisco, 11,000 miles away. They knew it would mean sinking into the desert the money of thousands of stockholders in a project that might well end in complete loss. Such decisions are not made lightly, and many an hour of study and debate had occupied many men before the company sent the late Lloyd Hamilton, one of the great figures of Middle Eastern oil, as emissary to Arabia. On May 29, 1933, after weeks of discussions, there was a meeting at Qasem Palace on the outskirts of Jeddah. It was there that Saudi Arab government officials representing His Majesty signed a concession covering roughly 320,000 square miles. This was the starting point of a new American business venture abroad. But ahead, there was a long, long distance to travel, a huge investment, years of effort, and no end of patience and perseverance. Most important of all, the job would require men, hardy men, determined men, men who were willing to leave families and friends and journey halfway around the world on a quest that might end in failure. Men who could face hardship and monotony and still take it. Men like Paul Strong. Paul Strong had never heard of Saudi Arabia when he was asked back in 1938 if he would like to go there. That answer was easy for him. He would not like to go. For his money, give him the peace and quiet and comfort of the small American town where he'd lived since he finished college just a few years before. The company sought out other men. Sought them where men are always found when the chance of pioneering is offered, across the breadth and depth of America, on farms, in small towns, in great cities, and each man had his own problems to weigh, each his own decision to make, for they were being asked to make a life career of oil in Arabia. They weighed and decided, and gradually they began to arrive. Carpenters, machinists, riggers, technicians, drillers, executives too, eager to extend a welcoming handclasp to the new arrivals. And who is that over there? Why, sure enough, Paul Strong. Paul had forgotten back in the States that he had that traditional American characteristic, a hunger for adventure and challenge. He and the others had come to learn of the Middle East, and they found the going was tough. Few outsiders had ever before been beyond the treaty port of Jeddah, and the Arabs were suspicious of these strange newcomers. Many of them were frankly hostile and were quite ready to show their feelings. Even the extended hand of friendship was accepted grudgingly in the early days. On top of all this, it was hot. 120 in the shade on many a day in summer, sometimes soaring to 140 in the sun, and with high humidity to make it even worse. There were flies and dysentery, and the housing was makeshift. There was little to do except work, and life seemed rugged indeed. Here in such a setting, they prepared to search for oil. The geological crews combed the blistering desert month after month, searching for places most likely to yield petroleum. Instruments and calculations indicated the best prospects, but the geologists knew what many laymen don't, that the only way to know whether or not oil exists in any one place is to drill for it. Finally, they drilled the first well. They found oil, but not in commercial quantities. It was not encouraging. They drilled again, no luck. And again, still failure. These were dismal days, and here and there a voice would say, "We're licked. Let's admit it." But there were stubborn men in the field and in the San Francisco office who did not have enough sense to quit. The kind of senseless men who all through history have done such foolhardy things as believing that steam could run an engine, or that crops would grow on the deserts of California, or that a voice could carry over a wire. It was men like these who said, "We'll drill deeper," who drilled and failed once more, and saw their careers and their reputations burning away beneath the desert sun. And then, at Dammam, it happened. Oil in commercial quantities had been brought in after 3 long, discouraging years. This was the goal toward which they had striven. This was the victory that faith and sweat had bought. A long road has been traveled since those early years. There have been changes and great expansions. The original concession has been enlarged and now embraces an area of 440,000 square miles, equal to the states of California and Texas combined. Since that first paying well established Dammam as a major oil field and Saudi Arabia as an oil country, other fields have been discovered. Production has risen until, in 1947, it reached close to 19 million barrels, from less than 4 million in 1939. In the prolific Abcake field, production by the end of 1947 was averaging about 200,000 barrels a day. Oil from Abcake is sent by pipeline to Dhahran, about 40 miles away. From there, more than 100,000 barrels daily flow through one of the world's largest underwater pipelines to the Bahrain Petroleum Company's refinery on Bahrain Island. The rest is moved by pipeline for shipment abroad or for processing in the company's refinery on the mainland at Ras Tanura. This modern plant was planned to help meet the enormous wartime demands for military petroleum products. The project was approved by the Joint Chiefs of Staff in 1943. It was rushed to completion in 1945 at a cost of approximately $50 million, all of which was put up by the company. In this work, about 1,000 Americans and 5,000 Saudi Arabs were employed for 1.5 years. Its rated capacity was 50,000 barrels daily, but it has actually been turning out more than 115,000 barrels a day, 230% of its original rated capacity. Supplying this refinery required the drilling of additional wells and the building of pipelines to deliver crude oil from the fields.